David Trapani in the house.
Hey, what's happening, guys? Look at you with the fire.
This is for you, dude. Hey, and be sure to look at me for this. You're looking somewhere else. How are we gonna do that?
How's that better?
Yeah, it is better because I don't want it to be like, you know, you've got an eye contact problem.
You know what? We just moved to a new Mac with a new camera. Let me just loosen this up here. And that's one of the things, the flaws right now is trying to get my camera.
There you go.
Yeah. Be in a better position.
All right.
And I'd even bring it down. If it's possible, I'd tilt it a little bit, if possible. Yep, you're getting there.
You guys.
Did our makeup person arrive on schedule?
Here she's gonna go. Come in a few minutes.
Hair and makeup should be there any minute, and then we'll get started. But no, we have a little waiting room piling up here, and I think we're gonna let people in. So David, I mean, it's gonna be super casual. I think, Coop, if you want to start letting people in.
Sure. Yeah, we got 7 to 8 people in the waiting room. Let's get this party ready to go.
All right. So yeah, we're gonna start letting people in. We will give the next few minutes for folks to join us, and expecting that a few people will be late. We have, I'll maybe do another level of introduction, but there's going to be folks from the Nerdwise team who many of the names you may recognize, a handful of other customers, some friends of the company. My brother, my dad might actually join. He's never made it to one of these. I invited him. And then, even on our team, plus some other entrepreneurs who, not so unlike myself, are at different stages in their sales career. So I think we will probably spend a little time talking sales with you and pick your brain in that arena. But Coop, let me see here. I don't have the same Zoom view. Okay, yeah, we've got a pretty full house.
Yep.
So yeah, Coop will keep letting people in, and then we can go ahead and get started. So for the folks who have joined, for the people who continue coming on, welcome. I'm going to give David Trapani a proper introduction in just a moment. First, I just want to introduce you guys, and I was just doing that. So for those of you who joined early, I apologize. But we have the Nerdwise team. We have some Nerdwise customers. We have some friends. We have some founders and entrepreneurs, a few people at different points in their sales career. The format here is going to be about 20-30 minutes of conversation with David. We'll learn a little bit about him, his background, his story, those types of things, and then we'll switch to open questions and answers. You guys can chat questions in, and we will ask them on your behalf, or just let us know that you have a question and you would like to ask it, and we'll pass the mic to you, or we'll unmute you, and you can jump in and interact with the man one-on-one yourself. That's right, David, you're the man of the hour here. So if you have questions, let us know. And then I think we're at 5:02. We can get started. So the introduction to David, I think it's been maybe 2 years since we first got acquainted. And at the time we were doing really social marketing and going after Sandlers and bringing them on board. And for a time we had about, I think maybe close to 20 different Sandler franchisee, Sandler CEO accounts that we were working with. And then since then, David has actually been a client that has partnered with us and helped us as we've evolved and as we've deployed new solutions. It's been a great partnership. Now our work is mostly focused around lead generation with David. But it's been a phenomenal run. And so I guess just one point is thank you for while I have you publicly in front of people, I want to give you a thanks for being a great customer, a great partner. But you really have helped us, even from the early days to now, build us up in the sense that we have learned a lot working with you and building out new solutions. For those of you guys who don't know, and I'll let David tell you more, but Sandler is, I think, the largest and most sort of preeminent sales coaching, sales training, sales consulting brand there is. I don't know of another one. I know there are other players out there, and everybody, if you start talking to sales trainers about other sales trainers, I find they get a little bit defensive sometimes. It's kind of funny. I don't know if you've noticed that, but when I tell other sales, like let's save that for another time. But it's anyway. So David is with Sandler. He's the CEO of the Sandler Princeton, and he helps sales teams, sales professionals unlock new levels of growth. I have used sales trainers, sales coaches throughout my career, and it's one of the best investments I've ever made. You know, you think you know everything about sales, and then you find out that it's like completely different. It's psychology. It's asking the right questions. It's, you know, there's so much that goes into it that's qualitative, and sales coaching is just a phenomenal way to start to break down, understand what really drives behavior, what really drives interest, what drives deals, and how to move things forward. So that's my intro to David. And I want to actually let you do a better job than I just did. So David, hello, welcome. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we'll take it from there. But thank you for joining us, and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so Dave Trapani, obviously from Sandler Training, and my office is based out of Princeton, New Jersey. And we're working with sales teams. You know, one of the biggest questions that I get is, you know, is my company too small? Is my company too big to do business with Sandler? And the reality is, we work with companies, you know, solopreneurs all the way up to Fortune 100 companies. So folks of all different sizes and different industries are coming to us for help. My background is in sales. I've managed teams over the years. And about 10 years ago, I recognized that I was on the other side, hiring people to come in and train my team. And I always felt like I could do it better. But the reality was I never had a system. Even though our teams were pretty successful, we never had a system. So when I went out to go do this on my own, that's what Sandler really provided, was that system, was that methodology to really change the sales game. And it's been a great journey. So thanks for having me on tonight, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and David, would love to know, like, from your career, what was your first job, or when did you first get into sales? I mean, I worked at a pizza place for 7 years as a kid, and it took me, I think, another 5 after leaving the pizza place to realize that I was doing sales and customer service and all these other functions the whole time, even though I thought I was just, you know, tossing pizza dough and having fun. But how did you get your start? Like, what was your first job, and when was the first time you realized you were a salesperson, or when you realized that you were selling something?
Yeah, so it's pretty funny. You know, right out of college, there were no jobs available. So I was lucky enough to connect with a local office of Prudential, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with Prudential. But at the time, I had no idea what I signed up for. I really had no clue. I was selling life insurance, investments, and auto and home insurance. So right out of college, I was in it, kind of figured it out, and had a good experience there. But actually, there's a funny story that I don't think I've ever shared beyond, you know, my family here. When I was about 10 or 12 years old, I was at an auction with my aunt, and I was buying things from one stand, and I was selling it to people as they were walking by for a higher price. So at that point, she said, "Hey, you're going to be in sales one day." But yeah, so right out of school, right into the sales game.
So you had some of the underlying characteristics or the people skills, and you weren't afraid to go up and talk to people about what you thought was, you know, of value at the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool. That's a great story. And then with Prudential at that time, were you knocking on doors or calling on the phone, or what? I mean, what was the sales process like? What was that? 15 years ago when you graduated?
Well, I wish I could say that. So it's a long time. It's a long time ago. So early 90s. And it was cold calling. It was maybe you paid for some advertising, but at the end of the day, it was cold calling, asking for some introductions. So I tell people, I was lucky enough after a couple of years at Prudential to move on to another firm in the retirement space. But that job at Prudential was the hardest sales job I ever had. And I don't know if anybody on this call has ever sold life insurance, but I deal with some folks today that sell investments and life insurance. That is one of the, in my opinion, there's some tough sales out there. That's one of the toughest.
I imagine that that everyone on this call has been sold or attempted to been sold life insurance at one point. So I'm sure they've at least had the interaction or the intersection with it. So if you were to go back to then, with everything that you know now, plus the technologies, the things that have come to light, would you think you would have been a better, more effective salesperson today if you were, or like what I guess what has changed, or do you think you would have an easier time jumping in today as a salesperson, or is it still the same? Is it still the same challenges, or is it, how has it changed? Is it just as hard, or has it gotten easier?
Yeah, I think what hasn't changed is people are, or maybe it's even gotten harder. People are more educated today. People have issues. You guys are probably a great have a great understanding of this. People need your service. It's just they struggle to pull the trigger. And I think that's one of the things that wouldn't be different if I went back in time. But I think there's a couple of things that I would absolutely do differently. If I go back to my early days, it was, I'll call it, I was working on one leg of the TP. It was cold calling. That's all we did. We did cold calling. We didn't have extensive marketing plans. So that is absolutely a shift that I wish I knew that back then, what I know now, because having multiple legs of the TP or of the stool to go out and market to folks, that would be one shift. I think the other one is, and I think that this is an issue across all sales folks. Even as a kid, I thought I knew what I was doing. In the office that, where I work with people, where you're asking people for advice, you trust that they know how to sell. And the reality is, and I think, Patrick, you teed it up, is there is a system, there's psychology behind and methodology behind selling. And without that, we're working way too hard. So if I could go back in time and put together sharp marketing plan and a system, a selling system, I think that those would be absolute game changers.
Yeah. I remember before I knew really truly what sales was, I always thought it was, coming to the table with the solution, like being the expert, having the answer, having the thing that, that this person needs is going to solve their problem. And I think what I've learned is sometimes you need to get away from the solution and understand the problem first, or understand the client, the prospect. And and until you've done that, then you don't know. I mean, you could be buying, I don't know. I've seen it where you think, even though the person may still buy the same thing at the end of the day, they probably going to do the same thing. But if you don't understand them first and their need and the reason they're talking to you and all of the things that are really the predicate to a sale, it just doesn't happen.
Absolutely. It's an interesting, I could go on a 20-minute discussion about this. There's a financial advisor that I work with, and one of the messages as we trained him, he goes, Dave, I could tee up a prospect in 5 minutes. I know exactly what they need in those first 5 minutes. And I said, well, there's your first mistake, because until they arrive at the conclusion, it doesn't matter what you know. Everybody arrives at their decision at different times, and you've got to help them get there. And I think you're exactly what you said, Patrick. The result, the sale might be exactly what you thought of at the 5 minute mark, but until they determine that they need it, it doesn't matter what you put out there. It's got to be their solution. Yeah,
it's so funny because what you're selling doesn't change, but understanding understanding the client and them being comfortable and understanding that you understand is like step one of the sale, and then you can move on to the order. But there's this part of it which is important with sales psychology and having these things that it's the classic, you don't know what you don't know. So for an early salesperson, even if I was listening to us talk right now and I was 20 years old, I wouldn't get it. Probably it would take, you have to do it once, you have to see it in action, whatever the case is. But that side of it, it's a little bit hard to grasp, I think, or it's not an easy concept until you've been through it a little bit or had some really good teachers, good coaches. But the other side of it, the quantitative side, which I know that these two are empirically connected, if I'm using that word correctly, but that they're totally connected. But if somebody's trying to get their numbers up, and everyone is, right, and everybody wants more sales, increased sales, where do you start when that's what you're tasked with? When they say, David, we need to grow, we need more numbers, we need more leads, we need more conversions on our leads. People are trying to get their numbers up. Like, what do you do in that situation? Where do you start?
Yeah, and that's, what you just brought up is probably one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest challenge in sales. And my belief is you actually have to run two parallel paths. There's got to be a path, especially early. If somebody wants to develop their pipeline, get more opportunities, we have to put path one in action, which is understanding the sales methodology, understanding what's happening to us as salespeople, what's happening in the buyer's mind, looking at systems or methodologies, put them in place. But really underneath that line is another parallel line, which is you got to do the activity. So I do a high level focus. I don't want to make it sound like it's 25,000 foot view. It's a deep dive into pipeline development. And it looks at the quantitative side. Am I doing enough activity to generate appropriate pipeline? And I follow a multi-step process for developing the pipeline, which really, I think at the end of the day, I don't like to use the word tricks because I don't think that's a good word in sales. It gets the salesperson to automatically do more activity without knowing that they're doing that activity. So it's a multi-step pipeline process that starts to feed the system, and the only way to feed that system is to do the activity. But I think you got to run those two simultaneous, or if you try to do quantitative without qualitative, you really start working too hard. Your numbers may be up, but the quality of those opportunities may not be great, and you start spinning your wheels on bad deals.
That's an extremely good point. I didn't actually. I guess I could see that. That makes total sense. You do need both, and then I think that the maybe the next level challenge is what are those activities, because for different businesses they're different. And there are sales models that are of course like the same between businesses, and so they're not drastically different. I mean, to some degree you need to get in front of new prospects on a regular basis, but it can look very different. So I guess what are the activities that you see today that I know there's LinkedIn, right? That's a whole new phenomenon for sales in the last 5 years, that now there's a living database of folks to use for all these other layers or parts in the sales process. But if there's a couple, I don't know if I should ask you to tell me what activities people should be doing, but where should a salesperson who's trying to get new business, what should they be doing with their time? Like what are the activities that are inside of there?
Yeah, it's a great question, and actually I'm going to go a little bit backwards, so hopefully I stay on course here. I had a boss 15 years ago. We put together we were building a smaller sales team for one of the products we were delivering, and the team just killed it right out of the gate. I mean, we hit double the sales results in 9 months that were targeted over 3 years. And my boss was just, we happen to have a great relationship even to today. And she said, people, your name is like gold right now. You should write a book. And I said, it's a 2-page book. It's, do the right activities, essentially. That's a couple of sentences. So So let me, it's not rocket science, and I don't think I'm sharing anything that would be, sensitive information or super special. I think that the biggest challenge with sales is people know what to do, they don't do it. And they don't do it because either there's a bit of fear or they don't have the tactics or the strategy to put out the right messaging or to say the right things. So we want to actually do a little bit of reverse engineering, which is, and Patrick, you said something that I thought was actually really helpful for, I think, all salespeople. You called it, and we got to talk to a number of prospects. So if you look at that number for everybody on this call, for every salesperson, there is a number that every week I need to have X number of conversations, and they need to be with quality opportunities. And I've got clients that it could be one conversation a week, it could be 3, or in some cases it's up to 12. To get to those good conversations really gets to your question, which is, what are the activities? And if you start to spike them out, it's, what's my advertising? You guys are doing the email campaigns. How many emails am I sending? How many LinkedIn requests? How many LinkedIn messages? How many referrals am I asking for? Am I asking for introductions, cold calls, going to networking events and asking people to do a one-on-one? All of those activities, they're not really unique. I'm not going to have the silver bullet there, but the silver bullet is understanding the number of conversations with new prospects you need to have, and then doing, I saw Coop's face kind of light up, doing the activity.
Yeah.
Because we all know what to do. It's the hard part is going out and executing.
I learned this, and I think it's a little bit, I'm a little lazy because I don't always have a manager, so I can do things in sales that I think I probably would just like puke if I saw someone else do sometimes. But one of my favorite things to do sometimes is, and this is like a human nature laziness thing probably more than anything, is I love moving on from a lead. And I don't know, I know it's not, this is what I'm saying, I know it's not good. And I see your face, be like, really? But like if somebody's not go, it's a fit, I'm into it, I find that sometimes I get more value from saying, hey, I appreciate it, thanks, and versus calling and trying to get the appointment back and trying to create interest if it's not there. And look, if it's been 2 or 3 weeks and I haven't heard back, and I've emailed you a few times and I've left you a few voicemails and you're not getting back to me, I get peace, and I get productivity, I think, as well, by moving on. And I think maybe I answered my own question on how do you know when to move on from a lead, but at what point do you, I guess, do you think it's you qualify a lead or move on, or what's the process where you say like this either is like this one, like to the degree to which you follow up with a lead and then the degree to which you can move on? I think there's something in productivity as an activity about cleaning out your pipeline a little bit with the folks that aren't moving.
Yep. I'm actually going to shut my window because somebody's having their lawn cut.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys are picking that up.
No, I can't. I didn't pick up on it. That's good.
So actually one of the bigger struggles that people have, and it's an exercise that we do in pipeline management, is they hang on to stuff too long. And when we don't have a system that tells us red, yellow, green, green is go, yellow is caution, red is disqualify. We need to actually have a multi-step process that tells us, because there's leading indicators in each one of those conversations or lack of a conversation, that tells us where to go. And I think that salespeople fail in a couple of different areas. They don't have a process. They hang on too long. And you guys are awesome. Here's I work with Chloe, and Chloe and I had a call earlier today. We have that multi-step process that's going on. So we know when to disqualify. There are some sales folks that if they left one message, hey, I left Coop a message, he hasn't called me back, done. Well, that's not a process. That might be more wimping out. But because salespeople really haven't spent the time to develop those processes and those steps on what it takes, they're really not sure what the next move is. And by laying it out and saying, hey, week 1, I do this. Week 2, I do this. Week 3, I do this. And maybe having some characteristics of what a good lead actually looks like, you can start to do a really good job of disqualifying. I will share one thing, Patrick. I'm gonna continue on with my answer, but you know, at Sandler, I don't know if anybody is too familiar with Sandler on this call. You know, that was one of the big things that David Sandler came up with back in the late 60s was people hang on too long. So when we start to teach salespeople that they have a right to disqualify a lead, sometimes they get too excited and disqualify too quickly, you know, because they feel that like they're in power now. So you really have to have those multiple step processes to guide you. Okay, this one's going south and this one looks like a great opportunity. I'll hit the gas pedal here. I'll hit the brake pedal here.
Yep. You know, it's interesting. I'm a lover. I mean, everyone, I think there's a love-hate with process. You know, and at least, I mean, maybe it's more hate than love. I don't know. I'm not sure how the pendulum swings there, but I love process because it makes I think it makes everyone's jobs easier. You don't have to, you know, you have less stress. You know what to do. It's the next step in the process. It's this, that, and it gives you something. And then the other thing, particularly for early stage companies, is process lets you know what's working and what's not working. And I think, you know, if you do the same thing 20 times and it doesn't yield anything, well, your process may need to change, or the direction to which you point that process. And yeah, there is a process. A great process is a phenomenal gift, I think, for any role where you know what to do and it's tried and true and it works.
Yeah, I love the way you teed that up, because I look at you guys as very process oriented. So when you said, "Hey, I hate it more than I love it," that's actually a little bit surprising. But you know, I'll look at so I see you guys as you know, maybe it's just more than me. I am not process oriented, so it took me time to develop that skill set, and you do have to have that balance of, I got to understand process, but sometimes if I'm too process oriented, it could box me in. So you really have to be aware, are you following a process?
Yeah, no, I mean, we are process oriented, but the reason I think that there's a love-hate and a little, and I tend to think maybe a little more hate is because it's almost like saying like, this is the way it's done, this is the way you have to do it. And of course it doesn't feel natural, but it does make it easier, you know?
Yeah.
And it lets you know what works and what doesn't work. And I know when I get on the first phone call or the second or the third, I kind of know where it's going, and I know how to start, how to take things, you know, and I have peace. I get some comfort. I know that this is, you know, I have on the other side complete discomfort and lack of peace if there's no process and I'm winging it. I'm like, holy shit, you know, this is like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe not last question, but I think an important, related to this topic, but an important one is the relationship between marketing and sales. And I don't know that this is one answer in terms of where it stops with marketing and starts with sales. I mean, you could say marketing stops at, you know, lead generated and then it goes to sales. But from your standpoint, like, what is that partnership? What should that partnership look like? And, you know, yeah, well, I guess what should the partnership between marketing and sales look like?
You know, I love the question. I don't know if I have the best answer here, but I'll give you a couple of thoughts. You know, it's my belief that once the salesperson is talking to the prospect, that's where sales takes over. I think there has to be a great handoff, but they are two very different worlds. We have to let marketing do what they do, generate opportunity so that we have people to talk to. And oftentimes there's conflict. And I'll give you what I think is a good example of conflict in marketing versus sales. At Sandler, again, I'm not sure of everybody's knowledge of Sandler. You know, we talk about don't spill your candy in the lobby. Don't give out too much information too early. So in the world of sales, that's, you know, we're not giving out proposals really early. We're kind of holding that information back a little bit. Well, if I apply that same thought to marketing, I might lose out on deals because marketing is a different world, and I might have to throw more information out from my marketing team to generate those leads. So there's a little bit of conflict going on. So it's kind of a lesson learned for me. You guys are doing something really unique for us. You know, putting out we're going to do the 1 hour of free sales training. As a Sandler trained salesperson, that does not fit in the book. I mean, I can break out one of my books. That does not fit in the Sandler rule book. I can tell you that. But you know where it fits? In the marketing book. It absolutely fits in the marketing book. So we've got to make sure that that those worlds, while we need them to be interconnected because that handoff has to be smooth, let's not confuse what we're trying to do in marketing, trying to create people to talk to. That's our number one job. Get people excited and let the salesperson go out and qualify the heck out.
Yeah. I think that there's this new maybe like, and maybe, I don't know if it's 15 years old, 10 years old, or emerging, or the right way to categorize it. But there's a role, and I'm a big believer in this as well. And it's where I'll call it sales enablement, and then customer marketing, and some of these things that start to move beyond the, like, I don't want to call it like ivory tower marketing, where it's like done from up top and then the salespeople pick up and run with it, but that it's actually trying to make the salesperson's job easier, or make the customer have a smoother onboarding experience, or taking successful customers and turning them into marketing case studies, and taking the sales process that we talked about and giving you the nice collateral, or the nice copy, or the nice, whatever it is, the nice next step, the thing that's gonna, maybe it's an offer, whatever the case is, the things that enable sales to move a little bit smoother. I love that. And I feel like that's like an emerging category of marketing that is in the sales arena, but is still, and it's like right in there. I mean, it's like it's the right-hand man of the salesperson, is these sales enablement tactics where, the deck, a sales deck is sales enablement. If it's been put together right. And I mean, sometimes salespeople put together great decks. Sometimes it should be done by marketing,
Yeah.
One of those things. I'm going to go to something a little more timely, and then I want to pass it off to the group. So if you guys have questions, chat them in, or let us know that you have them so we can call on you. But, and this is a fun question for me, and it's fun and two-sided, as many things are, but, the pandemic, COVID, has changed a lot of things for a lot of businesses. I would say most businesses have changed, and people have had to change their lives, the way they work, probably the way they sell. What are you seeing with your clients, with sales, as it relates to the pandemic? And the purpose of the question is, not only what are you seeing that's changing, but like how are people taking advantage of it in a way? Like how can you capitalize on the fact that your decision maker is sitting at home on, doing Zoom calls all day, not, managing the floor, or whatever the case is?
Yeah. I think it's a great question, because it's something we've been spending a lot of time on, talking to clients. So there's a couple of things that I'll throw out there, probably more than a couple. Some of our clients have done really well. They're just in a good space to do well during the pandemic. We had one client really take a hit. We had another client have a slowdown. So it's hitting everybody a little bit different. So I think we should all be aware that, everybody's experience is a little bit different. And I say that because I have some folks that do some cold calling for us. And one of the recordings that we listened to is they called a suspect, we'll call it. And they said, hey, before we get started, how are you dealing, during this COVID challenge? And the owner of the business said, well, how's everybody dealing? Business is bad. Well, no, it's not. And we've got to be aware that there still are pockets that are doing well. So a couple of things, we got to be aware of that. Second thing is, and I brought that story up for a reason. If you go back 6 months ago, I would have trained every person that I work with. And I think Sandler collectively, can't speak for everybody, but you would hear us say, if you were calling a prospect, don't ask how they are, because you probably weren't sincere about it. But there's been a shift, I think. You can say to somebody, hey, Coop, how are you doing during this pandemic? And because we're all in that, and if we now give Coop time to respond, I'm listening to calls where people are giving 60 and 90-second stories of how things are going. So I think that's a shift. We should be asking people, how they're dealing with things, how is business going, how are you doing, because we're all in it together. Here's a couple of other nuggets that come out of that. One thing that we are seeing consistently, and I don't know how other folks are faring, my observation list is, it's not the world, it's not tons of companies, but our clients are having more conversations. So they are getting more conversations than they were 6 months ago. And that could be attributed to people are home, maybe easier to get a hold of. I think it's also attributed to people are home and they want to talk to somebody. So we're seeing that. Now, two changes that we are seeing, there is a little bit of, so we're getting more conversations. So again, if you're in that camp of getting more conversations, we have something at Sandler, we call it the upfront contract. Make sure that every conversation you have has a clear calendared next step. So if I have a conversation, Patrick, with you, it went well, we're going to put you on the calendar for that next call. Now that next call hopefully is next week, maybe it's 2-3 weeks out, but I'm going to look to put you on the calendar because the willingness of those folks putting me on the calendar has also gone up.
Yeah.
But what we are also seeing is two things. One is slower decisions to sign a contract, although we've seen some pockets of some good successes recently, but it looks like deals are taking a little, and depending upon your industry, deals are taking a little bit longer to happen. And one thing, and we did make this change in our business, we kind of built a phased approach during COVID. People are buying smaller solutions for smaller time periods. So for example, for me, people would typically buy a 12-month, 18-month sales training for their company, for themselves. We are now going out to 6 months because we don't know what the next 6 months brings. So now we've also, I think we treat our clients really well where we don't lock them in, but we don't want people to feel that pressure. So shorter duration solutions seem to be the way to go if your business is capable of doing that. We're capable of doing that. Not every business has a shorter solution or a smaller investment, but what we're finding is where you can sell something a little bit smaller than you might have been selling 6 months ago, we're seeing better receptivity from the clients or from the prospects.
Yeah. It's one thing that people need now more than ever is sales, right? There's the uncertainty and all these other things. So everyone's looking, if there's one area that people are continuing to spend, it's sales and marketing, as far as I can see. I mean, I've noticed that. And then the other thing, I saw this come through LinkedIn as an article that was shared by like Harvard Business Review. And I only read the post, but it was how to change. It was like some article about changing your sales approach during the pandemic. And the guy said his favorite tip, so I can't I have to tell her, but I didn't read the article and I don't know what, but he said, you have to act like you're selling to the CFO. And I think that's important too. I think the shorter duration, I've been giving folks outs, 60-day outs, 90-day outs on contracts, things, because you got to build more trust and comfort, particularly because they have more uncertainty. But then that idea of, even if you're talking to the head of marketing, even if you're talking to the head of sales, or you're talking to whoever it is, the CEO, decisions aren't going to get done unless there's a clear ROI and then the numbers match out, because these are people cutting costs, so. But yeah, you make good points, and I think those are all very, very helpful, particularly around people. I think we are all going through this together, and taking just a minute to hear how someone else is doing, because it is impacting everybody differently.
Yeah.
That's a great way to establish an emotional connection, and it's a great way to. You don't always get that. In some ways, it's nice.
Yeah, we did a culture workshop yesterday. We've got a company that we're very friendly with. They sell solutions for employee culture, and right now we're doing 3 topics with them. It's managing your remote workforce, and we actually brought that up on the call to the CEO of that company, and he said, absolutely. In this time, if you think about the world of selling, people buy from people who they like and trust. But before that occurs, there's actually, and don't hold me to this because I'll get it wrong, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People have a need to be heard, understood. You guys probably understand it better than I do. So in today's challenging times, that's even more critical. So more critical for remote workers, more critical for your prospects. And asking that question is actually helping to get people's needs met. And it really, so his point was, because I had brought that up as a question, he goes, that's absolutely a game-changing way to approach a new prospect.
Yeah, no, it's true. Everybody's got their regular world, and then this whole other thing happening that we all are sharing, but it's different for everybody. And I think you're right. I mean, I think starting tomorrow, I actually always start a call asking someone, how are you? And everyone always says, sometimes they give me the usual, I'm good, thanks. And I say, okay, well, maybe I can go a little deeper there and open up more, because if you can start a conversation with getting the person talking and getting them, I'm gonna be pushing more on that one for sure.
I'll give you guys the words. The words are pretty simple because we have a company that's doing thousands of calls a week, and they've embedded this in, and it's, hey, during these times, how are you? How are your company doing? That's the line. And because they record all their calls, you have to hear the outcomes. So when they get somebody to go, you know what, we're doing pretty well, here's what's happening, you'll hear 60, 90, 120 seconds of dialogue. That's moving forward. That is always moving to an appointment.
Yeah. This last one I have to contribute for the people that are on, plus, whoever hears this recording and as it goes on in eternity. But the other thing that I have seen, I've had to help a lot of sales teams with, is picking winning markets. I mean, if you're selling to assisted living 3 months ago, like, forget about it. You don't want to reach out to them and try to help them implement a new IT system or whatever, I mean, people that are in the crisis, that are in the middle of, that are neutral, meaning they're like not dead, or dying, but they're not moving forward. I mean, you got to acknowledge the markets that you're serving and go towards the ones that you're going to have that are spending, that are going to be having more forward motion in their business. And there are markets that businesses, that are struggling for one reason or another. Like, so, if you're a restaurant, don't try to get people to come in and book a reservation, push them to takeout or delivery. So I've taken up a bunch of the time here. Coop, do we have questions?
We absolutely do. We got a handful on deck here. And first, I just want to start off in saying, David, thanks for just always being a champion and joining this fireside chat. And going back to something that you and Patrick were talking about maybe 20 or so minutes ago, one of the best lessons I got or received maybe 10 years ago when I started to dip my toes in the world of sales was, you just got to surrender to the process, because it's just part of it. And you can't really trust people to do the right things and do those activities, but you've got to surrender and follow that process and that implemented system and see the outcome. And then you'll be really excited. It's like trying to fight through that first initial barrier or that first initial ceiling. It's like, man, I got to do this 6 to 7 times before I give up or pass this lead on. It's like, yes, you do. But when you see the reward at the end, when it does happen, because it all does come together, that's when you really start to become a believer. And you just got to surrender and know that it will work as long as you got the right things around you.
You hope it does, unless you have a shitty process, in which case you need Dave Trapani.
Yes, that is correct. So well, with that, I want to ask a question where, the pandemic's hit us all, and it's so easy to focus on the negative things. And today is all about just keeping things positive. How has it made you better as a coach, as a leader, and as a Sandler sales consultant? What's it done to improve your business and, you as a leader?
Well, I love the question, Coop, and I haven't been asked that, but there's a couple of things that come to mind. I think, one of the first things that I did earlier, Sandler was offered, we have a partner that does assessments, behavioral assessments, and they created one for dealing in times of stress. It was created very quickly. So I did that early on. I want to say around March 25th, I'll say I did it. Mm-hmm. And in that assessment, it was clear that I sometimes chase the shiny ball, the newest opportunity. And it was when I got that report and I saw that, it was right now we cannot chase shiny balls. We have to stay in the system. And I am that, you know, if anybody knows disc, I'm a high D, or, you know, high D with some I, so I could be all over the place. But it was a real eye opener that we have to be very focused on just a few things that will drive results. The other thing that we really went back to was, well, we gave back a lot, and we've been giving back a lot to folks. So make sure we were giving back. Sandler did an amazing job there, continues to do that. But we really peeled back two things with our clients. One was, it became evident that it's more important today to follow the processes, the tactics, methodologies that we're teaching than ever before. What you were getting away with in January and December and still winning some deals is not going to fly. It just will not fly, because people are worried about their ROI. They're more selective about what they're going to do. So if you weren't asking great questions or setting great upfront contracts in January, you will lose business because of that. So we got really diligent, and we've been very diligent about making sure people are following what we teach. The second thing is understanding your sales process. And Patrick brought it up earlier, that idea of what's a good opportunity versus what isn't. We've been spending hours with prospects in making sure they have good templates to identify what's good and what's not good. Where should I hit the gas? Where should I hit the brakes? Because again, what you got away with 6 months ago is not going to fly any longer. There's not enough opportunity. And when you create that opportunity today, you want to make sure you're working on the right things in your pipeline.
Absolutely. I love it.
Great question.
Yeah. I got a couple more here. Do you have a favorite industry that you like to work with, and why is that? You know, what is your bread and butter, and what industry specifically maybe that you just really get geeky about, that you're just like, man, this is like a layup for me. I'm just so excited because, you know, and maybe the other question there is like, what's the hardest industry for you to serve and to coach?
Yeah. So I think, you know, I think my favorite industry is financial services, because that's my background. I can talk the talk. I think second in there is IT sales. The IT folks, we tend to do really well with them because they often listen to us and do what we're teaching them. What was the second part of the question?
What
Bad ones.
Industry that maybe you don't get super excited
Yeah.
and, you know, have these beautiful, you know, exciting moments with? What do you not want to maybe focus on, or have a tough time getting?
I can't think of an industry that, you know, that we don't do well. There's a particular individual that we don't do well with. The one that knows how to do it before they even sat down with us. The person that says to me, here's what I need, that might be struggling. Well, how can you know what you need if you're struggling? You know, we need to have a little bit more exploration. You got to trust us a little bit. But from an industry standpoint, boy, sometimes it's financial advisors and IT people who know everything that they do now. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there's an industry that, you know, where we don't do well is typically in residential real estate.
How do you feel about startups? Like early stage. I'm talking like 5 guys or less and new products.
Yeah, those folks are typically open-minded, early stage, less head trash about what they need to do. They really value what it is we bring to the table, and we tend to do very well with those folks.
Cool. I've had, from a marketing standpoint, I've seen a number of different things, but it's always the easier when folks have product market fit, and they know this product's for this market, and we know because we've got 5 or 10 customers in it, and then you can move forward with with things. But I've seen the opposite from a marketing standpoint, where they don't have that, and it's like, oh, you got to like do the creative, the the hard foundational work as well as the execution of the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
Coop, what else we got?
So everyone in this day and age, you see it advertised on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and just in their own network of folks that everyone's like a sales guru. But what is it about you and Sandler Training that sets you apart from the rest of the competition out there?
Yeah. You know, one of the things is everybody is a sales guru. It's interesting. If you needed legal advice, you'd go to a lawyer. If you needed accounting advice, you go to an accountant. But if you need sales advice, just ask anybody. So that's always an interesting thing. What makes Sandler different is, you know, we're not winging it. I go back to when I thought about starting this business with Sandler, I had an opportunity to do it on my own or to do it with Sandler. If I did it on my own, it would have been completely made up, untested, unproven. Sandler has been around for 50 plus years, proven methodologies. It's been studied. I think one of the coolest things that's happened of late with Sandler is we have a pretty, I won't say it's large or extensive, but we have pretty good inclusion in colleges and universities. I think where our curriculum is included in about 40 different colleges and universities, and Harvard actually uses our curriculum in their entrepreneurial program. So that credibility, we know what we're teaching is actually working, as opposed to, we're just doing some guesswork. And then, you know, Coop, I'll just add one more thought. You know, it really comes down to the curriculum. So I like to say, hey, I'm a really good trainer. I'm great at coaching people. I help people get to that next level. But that curriculum, even if I was terrible, and we've got volumes of curriculum, even if I was terrible, that curriculum, if I just walk people through it, they're going to be a better salesperson. No question.
Excellent. Now this one's coming from me personally, and there's probably one or two out there that, you know, we'll sprinkle in here close to the end. And this is one of my favorite questions to ask. Knowing what you know now, throughout all of your experiences, the trials and tribulations, the successes and failures of this roller coaster ride, if you could go back 20 or 30 years ago when you first took that leap of faith in working with Sandler or going into the sales profession, what type of wisdom would you give yourself? What type of forward thinking would you kind of enable for yourself to have that competitive advantage?
Yeah, I'll go back to what Patrick said. I'll actually steal this from him, is being much more process oriented. I would fight process. I remember being asked, can you give me the deck that you're going to use in that sales presentation? And I remember going, I don't need to prepare. I got this. And that, you know, fighting that battle over the years and really coming to a spot where that prep work is game changing. You know, I'll just a quick little story. I was on a call this week with a sales guy. He was doing a call to try to close a deal. There was a little bit of a challenge. We role played what was going to be a 90-second phone call into this opportunity. That's all it was. They had to overcome one hurdle. It was going to be a 1, 2, 3 minute phone call. We spent 20 minutes role playing it. He goes, I'm calling the prospect right now. Call me back. Got the deal. 20 minutes of preparation. He won the business. I would have not done that 20 years ago. There's process. Mm-hmm. There's process.
Yeah.
Practice makes perfect. So
it's so true.
Yep.
Couple other ones here. Patrick, we still got time for one or two more, right?
We got a few minutes here. Yeah, we got. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the future of sales, you know, the pandemic is here. It's not ending anytime soon. The landscape of the selling environment has probably changed maybe forever. But how are you and Sandler going to approach the future? Are you guys rolling out anything new and exciting for all of your franchisees, or the way you go and approach your consultations? Like, what does the future look like for you and Sandler in the next, say, you know, maybe 1 to 3 years, we'll say?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I can't speak on behalf of all of Sandler. I can speak of maybe some hearsay as it relates to Sandler. I think one of the core differences of Sandler is, you know, we've got training centers. So we've got brick and mortar across the world, essentially. So that's obviously taken a hit. but I know that there's a focus on making sure we don't lose that. So I think there's a couple of things. It's one is we at Dave Trapani, I think we've done a nice job with our clients. We're pretty intimate. We get to know them. They stay with us for a long time. I think that that's got to be paramount. We've got to have better conversations with our clients, probably more frequent. Even though we're doing training in some cases on a weekly basis, we've got to make sure that we don't lose that real touch with our clients, as we may not be on site as much as we were in the past. I think my belief is embracing this technology, Zoom or whatever technology, and making it as effective as possible. I think the results are still going to be strong using these technologies. So I think we should all embrace it. And as things open up at some point in the future, maybe it becomes part of what we do, some in person, some Zoom, or maybe it's all Zoom based on where people are located. And I think the other thing, Coop, is, and Sandler, in my opinion, I didn't develop it, Sandler Home Office developed it, was super quick at adapting to the pandemic. So within 2 weeks of things shutting down, we had 8 presentations on how to deal with the pandemic. And now we're developing presentations and training sessions that are focused more on recovery and how to recover and how to continue to grow your sales. So the core curriculum will not change, because that's the methodology, that's the process. But being quick to say what's going to happen in the next 2 to 6 months and having tools to support that, I think is critical. And I think Sandler's done a really nice job there. And that doesn't have to be extensive. That has to be enough to give people new ideas, reinforce some best practices, and also what is working and what's not working. Sandler does a lot of studies. We just put out, I forget what it was, but 7 lessons from the pandemic. So being responsive to what you're learning and then putting out programs or supporting programs to keep those messages going.
Sounds like you got to always be willing to adapt to the environment that you're presented with. There's no excuses, and life has to go on. Business has to continue forward. Sales need to occur. People need to live and survive and flourish. And these are all things that we've got to surrender to again. You know, like it's something that we have to manage and lead forward.
We're fortunate. We're fortunate we get the same support from Nerdwise corporate. They
You know what's interesting, guys, as you asked that question, there's a couple of mindsets. There's the mindset of embracing this electronic world, and there's this mindset of, boy, if I'm not in the field, I'm not going to be able to win business. Now, I can't tell you what industries have to be in the field to win business, because I'm sure there are some, but I'm seeing that as a little bit of, I'll call it head trash, but a little bit of a crutch. People that are going, I can't sell because it's all remote. Mm-hmm. That, unless your industry truly, and I don't know what industry truly has to be in person. It's just lack of knowledge. But if you don't embrace that, you are going to struggle for the next X number of months. Mm-hmm. So we got to be able to embrace wherever we are today.
I was having breakfast with Coop and a friend of ours who's a very sharp business guy like 2 years ago. And I can't remember the topic, but he kept going for why something was not possible or why it wasn't going to work. And I just stopped and I said, this is a solutions table, not a problem table. and the reality of it is, and as you were talking, I was speaking of car dealerships. We have two companies, both software technologies that help car dealers sell more cars, and they're doing all right. They're doing fine. I mean, we're driving up leads. The car dealerships still want to grow, but I have to imagine that they're handling their leads a hell of a lot differently. If somebody inquires now about a car, you got to do a lot more over the phone, probably a lot more, video, a lot more when they come on. You get less face time when they come to the lot, and people are still buying cars, no question. Maybe not the same volume, but that's one that it used to be, come on down, we'll get to know you, sit down, have coffee, let's do, but you have to adapt. And if you keep seeing the problem, you'll never find the solution.
Great point. Yep.
Coop, do we have any more questions?
We don't, and I think that's actually a great place to end here, unless you think otherwise.
Well, my last question would be then, David, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they? And just thank you. But how should folks get a hold of you if they'd like to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the best way is my email is dtrapani@sandler.com, dtrapani@sandler.com. And if you know Coop and Patrick and you do want to get in touch, you can always reach out to them and they'll forward your info to me. If anybody does have any questions, I think one of the things we're very consistent with is we're not going to twist your arm. You know, just because you want to pick up the phone and have a conversation doesn't mean you're becoming a client. It just means you heard something here, you have a further question, you want to explore something. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone and reach out or send an email.
Yeah, cool. David, thank you so much for the time and the conversation. I think we really drilled into a lot of stuff here. I mean, if there's one thing that we've done that will help everyone sell more during the pandemic, this is probably it. This has been phenomenal. We've touched on a lot of key things. I appreciate it. It's helped me. I'm sure it's helped other folks as well. So thanks for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me in.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Fireside chat over. Till next time.
All right, have a great night, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, David.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.